Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Hanging with my buddy JFK back there. John F. Kennedy, for those who don't know what JFK stands for. My name is Colin Cernelia, and how are you doing today? It's another Monday for me. It's actually really beautiful here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm feeling a little I don't know if it's just because it's like day 60 of the pandemic and quarantine, and I just miss socialization. I have so much to be excited about, obviously, with Stella, with my book, with life in general, and there's just so much to look forward to, but at the same time, I just feel a little cooped up, I think, at this point, and I hope that you're doing okay, you're safe and healthy. I am, and I guess that's the most important part of all of this, but can't wait to get back out there. I was telling my wife on Saturday, for whatever reason, I had my first like serious moment where I was just like, wow, I could really go to a brewery today and just enjoy a cold draft brew, craft beer. Oh, and it would have been so great. It was another beautiful day here in Charlotte on Saturday, but just not meant to be right now. Just got to pick up my craft beer from the grocery store and go onto the deck and have my own little brewery. Not quite the same, but we'll make it work for now. I have a lot of things besides quarantine talk that I'd like to go through today. The first is I want to talk a little bit about The Last Dance, specifically the portion dedicated last night to Kobe Bryant, who, as many of you already know, and if you don't know, Kobe was one of the two most influential sports figures in my childhood and in my life, the other being Alex Rodriguez. And it was really cool to see that tribute that they paid to Kobe last night in the Jordan documentary, and how they really that footage is so cool. I mean, it's amazing to see like how much Jordan commanded the room, and even when he was the oldest person, I think he's joked about being the elder statesman or something on the team, and he still commanded so much respect from all of those all stars. But that matchup with Kobe, one of the only times that they would ever match up in a situation like that, when Jordan came back with the Wizards, he was never in a high pressure game, and the Lakers were in the middle of winning championships by that point. So to be in that type of environment with two of the greatest of all time, and we all know now how important Jordan was to Kobe and to the type of player that he wanted to emulate. And sometimes people may argue that he was trying a little too hard to be like Jordan, but hey, that's flattery, right? And I just think it was so cool and so well done, and little bizarre seeing Kobe, obviously, when he's been gone now for a couple months. And that interview, I think, took place sometime last year, but just really well done overall. Not just Kobe, but that whole documentary. I can't wait until this weekend. They're going to really get into that first retirement and everything that happens with Jordan and baseball and his dad and the conspiracies behind the gambling, which they got into a lot in the last episode. I won't spoil it if there's someone who hasn't watched it all the way through yet, but definitely something that you want to keep a pulse on and take a peek at. Watch it through if you can. It's really, really well done. I've been reading through this book here, Sick in the Head. Judd Apatow, one of my favorite writers, did the show Freaks and Geeks, one of my favorite shows of all time. Just so many different movies that he's done throughout the years. Just a really funny, smart guy, down to earth. And this book is a memoir. It's a lot of interviews that he's done with pretty much famous comedians throughout the years. And it's amazing how I joked about this. I think I posted about it was last week, that there was a quote from here that I talked about how it takes 7 years to really come into your own as a comedian. And I joked that I'm, of course, no comedian, although I have an interest in comedy. And there's so many other life lessons in this book that translate to the work that I'm doing, the type of life that I want to live. And I have to bet a little bit of money. I would think that it could translate and help you, anyone that wants to check this book out and read it, in your life as well. And I just wanted to read a few things here today. I know this is really great content, me looking down at at the book, but I thought there were a couple other points of emphasis that I could really talk about, and I made some notes here that I could reference and find really easily. All right. This one is with Chris Rock. Chris Rock's interview is actually one of the best ones. I'm probably like a quarter of the way through the book, and Chris Rock's was really amazing. And they were talking about success and how it's almost impossible to keep success going because at some point you have to stop to rest, learn something new. And Judd argues that that is essential. Like people's interest in you goes away so quickly, but you have no choice to step off the boats sometimes. And Chris agrees. He goes, "Yeah, if you're going to try to stay interesting." And it really made me reflect how we sometimes just want to keep pushing ahead, right? And we don't want to get off the boat. Like we don't want people to forget about us. Like that's momentum, right? Like that's everything that we've built up and everything that we've done has gotten us to this point. But I think it was a really interesting part of a conversation that I don't even know if either one of them thought anyone could take anything away from that. But I certainly, it clicked with me and said, wow, at some point you do just need to rest. You need to take some time to hear other opinions, to read different books, to talk to different people. Because if you're stuck in the same rut all the time, then you will become uninteresting. People won't like you anymore. People won't find what you have to say as compelling. I know that's happened for me with like Mike Francesa, for example, one of my favorite radio guys of all time, and he's just so boring and so terrible to listen to now. But back in the 90s, the early 2000s, especially when he was still with Mad Dog, but even after they broke up those first few years, Mike was still very compelling. But these days, it's just very much like the old man on the lawn, get off my lawn type thing, and it just doesn't make for good content. So I thought that was a really interesting aspect to consider. What are some other ones here? Let's see. Oh, another point made by Chris Rock. This one's really good. So I'll read the whole quote. He goes, "You know, that thing where it's just like it literally doesn't matter who's in front of you. I find more and more comedians complain about the crowd these days. Or they're always asking, how's the crowd? And I'm like, who do you give a fuck about the crowd? Or why do you give a fuck about the crowd? Sorry, I can't read. I mean, if you killed tonight, is the crowd going to get the credit? And so don't give it to them if you bomb. It's not them, it's you." And this quote struck me so strongly because how often do we blame outside influences anytime something goes wrong? But we never give those same outside influences any credit when something goes right. It's always, I did this. I was so good at that. Love me, watch me, notice me. But the first time something goes wrong, it's like, oh, that was a tough crowd today, or oh, they just don't get it, something along those lines. And it's just important, I think, to remember this point that Chris is making. Just made me reflect and remember that we really only can control our own thoughts and actions, right? So let's not try to discredit something that we can't control or something that we would never give credit to if things were going well. And I think that's something that I know I could be a little bit better about, and probably something that everyone could be a little bit better about. More from Chris Rock. Must have circled a lot from Chris. Let's see if we can get someone else in here. Let's see. Jerry Seinfeld, some good ones. Amy Schumer's a really good one, actually. Turned me into an Amy Schumer fan. Well, I'm not going to read anymore. If you guys want to read and figure out if this is something that you like, there's a really deep dive into Freaks and Geeks in here as well. But yeah, if you guys want to read it, just check the book out. Again, Stick in the Head, Judd Apatow. Definitely highly recommend. John even likes it back there. He's really been enjoying the book too. A couple other things that I've seen recently that are front of mind at this point. Zillow, the big company where you can go and look at houses and different things like that. Their CEO just put out a statement the other day that their entire company is going work from home for the rest of 2020. It'd be amazing to hear that in normal circumstances. Of course, the reason for that statement and for that explanation is because of the pandemic. Although I think, as I read a little bit more, that one of the reasons that the CEO decided to make that change is because they did see an increase in productivity and they figured out that they could do the work and not have to be in the same physical location. This has always been something that has really been, I've really been passionate about. I don't really understand why companies force you into these boxes. And I'm not just talking about the physical location of being at a work spot, but I'm talking about like boxing you into certain work hours, boxing you into this method that you are supposed to do your work from like this time to that time, and you're supposed to just be able to figure it all out all then. And I think about like comedians, I think about news people, I think about musicians, I even think about athletes. None of them are confined to this like super strict schedule where it's like 8 straight hours or something. Yet all of those people make more money than all of us for the most part. They're super famous for the most part. And a lot of them seem to not only really enjoy their jobs, but end up becoming like really influential people. And I know it takes a certain personality and a certain, you have to want to be in that spotlight and to take on that sometimes burden and that responsibility of being a public persona. But I just think about the type of work that they do. And I mean, you would just never ask. I can't think that the bands from the 70s and the 80s that they just sat in a room for 8 hours from 9 to 5 every day and banged out the classics that we still hear today. Like it definitely didn't happen that way. And I can't think about athletes. Obviously, like sometimes they don't play till 7 o'clock at night, and they have a full day before them to prepare and to rest and to be with family and to do other things, and then obviously still show up on time for the game and perform. And I don't understand why the corporate world, for the most part, is so boxed into this idea that we have to be 9 to 5. We all have to be in one work location. It just doesn't make sense. It never did to me. I'm totally cool with meeting other people and getting that camaraderie of being together and being in one place and going out for drinks and doing those type of things. But oh my God, can we please stop with we have to be in the office 8 to 5. We have to be in the office 9 to 6. You have to do your work then, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, it's so barbaric. It's so old school. It's just, I really hope that other companies are going to follow suit. And if it takes a pandemic to get people to change, then so be it. I guess there could be worse things that happen, but I just hope more companies follow suit because I just feel like there's more and more people like me. And I don't need to be working remote 100% of the time, but I also don't need to be in an office 100% of the time. I'd like to have the flexibility to do whatever I want and to be treated with the same type of trust that family members give you. You talk about companies that are always like, oh, we're like a family, except like you leave work 3 minutes early and people are just up in arms. They're saying, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And it never occurs to them that it doesn't really matter. Those 3 minutes, what are you just going to do? Sit there and watch a YouTube video? I'm being dramatic, obviously, but there are, I'm sure, are instances of people that are just killing time on the clock and not actually doing work and just sitting there because that's a old school company policy that some scared CEO doesn't want to change. So don't be that person. Be more like Zillow. Be more flexible. Be more trusting of your employees. They might surprise you. I'd be willing to bet that they will. The last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to bring it up here on my laptop, is a really cool letter. And I don't think this is the first time that the letter's been shared, but I happened to see it the other day. And I think I saw it on Saturday. It's really interesting that I saw it on Saturday, and then to hear some of the things that President Trump was saying on Sunday night to another former president. But let's tie this all together. Back in 1993, George H.W. Bush has already been defeated by Bill Clinton in the 92 election for president. Inauguration Day comes, and George H.W. writes this letter to Bill. And I'm going to read the full letter to you because for some people, it's going to seem like it was written 100 years ago, that there is no way that this was only, 25 years ago that this thing was written, because it is a letter in humility, is a letter in grace, it's a letter in leadership. Let's hear what Bill has to say or what George has to say to Bill. He says, "Dear Bill, when I walked into this office just now, I felt the same sense of wonder and respect that I felt for 4 years ago." Sorry, this is hard to read. It's his scribble. "I know you will feel that too. I wish you great happiness here. I never felt the loneliness that some presidents have described. There will be very tough times, made even more difficult by criticism you may not think is fair. I'm not a very good one to give advice, but just don't let the critics discourage you or push you off course. You will be our president when you read this note. I wish you well. I wish your family well. Your success is now our country's success. I'm rooting hard for you. Good luck. George H.W. Bush." I read this letter on Saturday and I was amazed by it. And then Sunday night, I read something about George Bush, H.W.'s son, W., the future president at that time in 1993, had come out with a video, maybe sometime late last week, a partisan video asking for people to remember that the virus doesn't know any boundaries when it comes to politics and that we should all be taking it seriously. Something along to those effects. I'll admit I didn't actually watch the video. And then I hear on Sunday night, President Trump is hosting a rally when he probably shouldn't be, obviously. And he is crushing George W. Bush, not entirely because of the video, but somewhat because of the video, mostly because of the fact that W. Bush never came out publicly and supported Trump during the impeachments, which seems like it was 30 years ago, but was actually just about 2.5 months ago. So it was just such a stark contrast of quote unquote leadership, if that's even what you want to call what Trump tries to do. I just don't know how we can continue on as a country like that and have somebody who has no regard for anybody's feelings. And I know that leadership, and especially the highest position in the free world, like, I'm not trying to be like an overly emotional person, but that letter that HW wrote to Clinton, Donald Trump wouldn't write that if he had a gun to his head and was being told he'd be killed. Like, he just wouldn't do it. And I'm not even feeling like that's harsh to say, but it's one of those things. I don't know. I'm never going to be president of the United States probably, and maybe I don't understand it, but I just cannot see how Donald Trump, and what worries me is, like, what is my daughter going to read in the history books 10, 15 years from now when she's going through school? Like, what will history say about President Trump? And I don't know, honestly. If I was writing them, I know exactly what I would say, but there are many people who feel like he never does anything wrong, and that's really scary. And I just would encourage you to look at that letter from HW, a Republican, written to a Democrat, and just remember that there's something about being a good person that makes somebody a great leader too. And that may be something that Donald Trump never gets or never cares to want to do, but for me, it's important. And I think that we can learn a lot from that, and I hope that people learn from these videos, and that's why I share some of these random thoughts that are going on in my head about different things, because I'm just always learning, and I have a lot to share, and it's hard to put it out there in the world that it's something that can be digestible for people. So I know these videos can sometimes feel a little crazy and out of the ordinary, but it's because there's a lot going on, and I want to talk with you. I want to connect with you. So that's pretty much all I've got. A lot of rambling, but hopefully a lot of good information for you today. I don't know when the next one's coming. Didn't plan this one, just felt the urge to do it today. So thanks for listening. JFK signing off. Until next time, take it easy.